Hey everyone, it's been so long since I've done an actual analysis video, so I'm really excited to finally be doing another one. And the key ingredient to this one is subversions. Why did it work in the Wings of Fire series, and what did Tui Sutherland do in order to set the big one up for success? Now, in order to cover this topic, we're going to go over three main points. First, why subversions are such a key element in the success of a story. Second, what exactly the Wings of Fire series subverted. And third, how bits and pieces of all 5 books in the first arc come together to both turn the entire series on its head, yet still deliver a satisfying ending. Let's get into it. So, subverting expectations, a magical phrase that seems to pop up anytime anyone talks about entertainment on the internet, and for good reason. It can make or break a story. Subversions done well feel fresh and interesting. They've led to some of the biggest moments in cinematic history, with iconic scenes from series as popular as Star Wars.
No, I am your father.
And Game of Thrones.
The Lannisters send their regards.
But if done wrong, they can just as easily ruin a story, as was demonstrated quite well in Star Wars and Game of Thrones. Clearly, if some of the biggest series in recent memory can both succeed so brilliantly and mess it up so badly, it's not as straightforward as it might seem. They're a high-risk, high-reward move, and whether or not they work depends on what exactly the story has promised the audience, but more on why that's important in a second. For now, let's just take a look at what the Wings of Fire series subverted. The answer to that lies in the very opening page of the entire story, the Dragonette Prophecy.
5 eggs to hatch on brightest night. 5 dragons born to end the fight. Darkness will rise to bring the light. The dragonettes are coming.
This is a textbook introduction to the Chosen One archetype, or in this case, the Chosen 5 archetype. It's a sort of plotline in which a character or set of characters have been identified, whether by fate or divine power or prophecy, in order to resolve some kind of conflict. They, and they alone, have the power to stop whatever evil is rampaging through the world. The Chosen One archetype is a fundamental kind of story. It's been used in so many different ways. It's in works both recent and ancient, in books, shows, and movies, and even in religious works dating back thousands of years. It is so thoroughly ingrained in our culture that even works making use of it sometimes explicitly call attention to it.
She's only interested in you because she thinks you're the chosen one.
But I am the chosen one.
Now, the first arc in the Wings of Fire series followed this archetype quite nicely, right up until the end of Book 4, where Morrowseer reveals the prophecy was never real. With one fell sentence, thousands of years of tradition and storytelling are thrown out the window. The Chosen One archetype gets subverted. So, how exactly does Wings of Fire still end in a satisfying way after upsetting such an ingrained type of storytelling? By delivering on its promises. And now I can explain what I meant earlier. This is a way of framing storytelling that I first heard from Brandon Sanderson, perhaps one of, if not the most influential sci-fi and fantasy writer of our time. The way he describes it, what happens early on in a story makes promises to the audience of what they can expect to happen later. The opening of Indiana Jones, for instance, in which Indy encounters a bunch of traps, gets betrayed, and still finds a way to get the relic and get out of the temple, promises to the audience that we're going to see more of Indy running into traps, getting betrayed, but still being competent enough to make it all work. And the film is great, in part, because it delivers on those promises. It sets up expectations at the start and then actually lives up to them. So, in the Wings of Fire series, what gets promised? Well, there's a number of things, but the big one we're going to focus on is arguably the fundamental promise of the first arc, that these 5 dragonettes are destined to save the world. Oh, whoops, wrong series. Now, wait, you might say, weren't you paying any attention at all? Morrowseer made that prophecy up. There never actually was a destiny. So aren't we just going back on that promise? Well, maybe, but let's take a closer look at the 2 important things that this destiny of theirs actually implied. 1, these 5 dragonets are special, unique, or different in some critical way that will allow them to stop the war. And 2, they are going to play the primary role in ending the war. Regardless of whatever Morrowseer said, these 2 promises were absolutely delivered on. First, our Dragonets of Destiny are pretty unique. One of the key themes of this series is that it doesn't so much matter what tribe another dragon is from, as much as what kind of a dragon they are. And for some reason, not a single dragon besides these 5 really seem to get that. Multiple times throughout the series, Kestrel, Scarlet, Coral, Blister, Morrowseer, so many others mistakenly assume that these 5 dragons, because they're from different tribes, aren't going to care for or help each other, and when they do, are caught completely off guard. Sure, there are some, like those in the Talons of Peace, who believe the tribe shouldn't fight, and there are even some, like those in the Scorpion Den, who seem to tolerate the presence of dragons from other tribes, but we never really see any who believe that different dragons aren't inherently different from each other, except for the main cast. And the books draw attention to this distinction. These 5 truly are unique in this regard. So even if they aren't special because of some prophetic power, they are special in what the book set up as an even more important way. And second, they really do end up playing a huge role in the war. This excerpt comes from Morrowseer, reflecting on what the Dragonets managed to accomplish in the space of the first 2 books.
The 5 had escaped, then possibly killed Queen Scarlet of the Skywings, thrown the Sky Kingdom into upheaval, turned Queen Coral against our allies, wrecked the Sea Wing Palace, and disappeared once more into the wilds of Pyria.
And that was just the first 2 books. Of course, they also go on to militarize the Rainwings, essentially subjugate what was left of the Nightwing tribe, and bring all 3 Sandwing Queens together in what ultimately led to the conclusion of the war. Again, even if they weren't always destined to, they still basically carried out the primary role of a group ending the war. Okay, cool, so we make the subversion work by doing exactly what we were going to do anyways, even after it was revealed that it wasn't our destiny? Well, no. And this is where the true magic happens, because saving the world wasn't the only thing readers were promised at the beginning of the series. In fact, despite the prominence of the prophecy, the Wings of Fire book also promised that things were never going to go quite as planned. The first hint at this comes not so subtly from the prologue of the first book, when one of the key eggs, the Skywing, is destroyed before it even has the chance to hatch. Of course, the characters spend a lot of time working with Glory as the replacement Skywing, but there's always that seed of doubt. And just as often as the prophecy is reinforced, so too is the fact that the supposed Dragonets of Destiny are 1 dragon short of the full set. It's like putting a crack into a piece of glass so that when something bumps into it, it shatters instead of holding firm. In Wings of Fire, the archetype was cracked before it could even begin. Importantly, though, it's not just the problem the characters focus on, it's how they're going to deal with it. Take Clay's thoughts on the matter from the end of the very first chapter of the very first book. What if they could do it? What if the Dragonets could escape and survive and save the world their own way? This line is a form of cliffhanger, but I go into that in more detail in another video. Importantly, it's also a hint, a clue, a promise that the author gives us. The Dragonets are going to save the world, but they aren't going to do it in the way anyone expects. And, like any good work of art, Wings of Fire lives up to the expectations it creates. It delivers on its promise. The Dragonets end the war and decide who the next Sandwing Queen will be, but it's not any of the 3 in contention. Instead, it's an outlaw. But an outlaw who is probably best for the throne. Also the one Killy loves, so I mean, what can I say? What can I say? She was obviously the right choice. But in doing so, there's payoff not only for the prophecy's promises of ending the war, but also for the promises made by all the hints that the prophecy was never real. And that is the key that allows this subversion of the Chosen One archetype to work. Even if we do realize that the Dragonets were never actually chosen, the promises set up for the readers are still fulfilled. In the end, the reader comes away satisfied, and perhaps with questions about the true nature of fate and free will. But that's a topic for another video. So for now, I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and thanks for watching.